I'm getting more production on 3 full days a week with 2 half days than I was on 6 full days, because of the way that I'm working my schedule, and I'm just having fun. And I think that's the biggest thing is I want to make sure that we're creating something that's sustainable for people. I've been doing this for 4 years. And if I continued to do what I did for 3 years, even though I made more money than I ever made in any other opportunity, I was about this close to burning out. For any of y'all who don't know me, maybe you've seen me in boot camp, but I'll kind of give a quick intro to myself and talk a little bit about some of the transitions that our business has had and really what we're doing today with new agents with a focus on IULs. So I have personally been in business now for a better part of 12 years. I have been in 9 different businesses or opportunities within the last 12 years, which is kind of crazy to say. And inside of that time, I've made money, I've lost money, I've had a wild journey to say the least. I've jumped from opportunity to opportunity. I've launched businesses that found success very quickly. I've launched businesses that took forever to get off the ground. I've dealt with everything from theft and embezzlement from partners, to bringing on massive teams from other companies, to having massive teams leave my team to go to other companies. I've made best friends in business. I've lost best friends in business, and I've pivoted more times in business than I can even count, and pivoted a handful of times just inside of the insurance business. So all of that really to go ahead and say that your business isn't going to look the same a few years from now. Our business today doesn't look the same as it did a couple of years ago when I first got started, and especially anybody here who is considering building a team in any way, shape, or form, you really want to keep that in mind. So when I first got started in Family First Life, it was a relatively simple system that we all followed. It was very simple for us to wrap our mind around. And anybody who's been here for a couple of years, this was it. This is all that we did. And everybody sold insurance at the kitchen table, in the home. There was no other option. And I joked earlier on the call because I'm pretty sure that somebody told me that telesales was illegal. They told me we weren't allowed to do it. And, obviously that's not the case, but we just had a big culture of people who were afraid of it, for whatever that reason being, whether it was persistency, whatever. But across the whole company, like if you did telesales, you were the black sheep for the first handful of years. So obviously so much has changed since then. The model when I first got started, it was very easy to understand. It was dial the phone, book 30 to 40 appointments in person. 20 of those are actually going to show up, and then you're going to sell 10 policies. So get 30 to 40 appointments, sit with 20, sell 10. And if you do that every single week, you're going to be a Hall of Fame producer, and you're going to issue pay $400,000 in a year. And it really doesn't matter what lead type it is, whether they're $100 leads or $2 leads. If you have to dial, 2 hours in the morning or from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m., as long as you got your 30 to 40 appointments and you sat with 20 and sold 10, you were going to do it. And that was the model. And it was very easy to wrap your mind around. And pretty much it was dial the phone until you get that done or you're not done. And that's what we would go ahead and teach other people on our teams to do as well. So that's obviously, transitioned, quite a bit. So there was this major transition that happened, to telesales about 2 years ago. And I personally feel like at the time when that happened, Family First Life, insurance in general, it became like one of those choose your own adventure books where it's like, hey, turn to page 5 if you want to do this, turn to page 17 if you want to do that. And when we got new agents started, we'd ask them what they wanted to do. Hey, do you want to do telesales or do you want to do in-home? Do you want to do final expense or do you want to do mortgage protection? Do you want to dial your own leads or do you want to do live transfers? Do you want to set appointments or do you want to do one call close? And again, like I said, what ended up happening is we started asking people what they wanted to do. And we started seeing everybody on the team do all kinds of different things to see what would work. And obviously in the long run, that was good because it helped us to learn what worked and what didn't work. But if I'm being totally transparent and honest, as a manager, what that did is I started to get confused and I started to question, like, if I was getting agents started the right way because there were so many options. I'd ask agents what they wanted to do, and then realistically, they were going to choose whatever sounds like the easiest or the least amount of work. And I had people doing, all kinds of things. So when you have people doing live transfers and final expense and IUL and this and that, and everyone's focusing on different things, what did that require? It required a lot of training about a lot of different things. So little training for this, little training for that. And it was just all over the place. And what ended up happening is new agents were coming out of our boot camp, which we have a new one coming out here shortly, which is probably a third the size. So anybody went to our last boot camp, it was 14 hours long. So you'll be happy to hear that we cut it down, divided it by three, and condensed a lot of information. But people were coming out, of course, with analysis paralysis. A lot of good information, but at the end of the day, maybe, egos got the best of us and we wanted people to hear us talk in, podcast style through everything. But long and short of it is agents were coming out confused. Our lead strategy sessions with agents were a little overwhelming because we're going through the ILC and saying, hey, let's look at your state and look at the 12 different lead options that are available. And we were doing something different for everybody. Everyone had a different plan, and what we were doing really wasn't duplicatable. And then I started looking around and seeing what some of the most successful teams and agencies in the company were doing. And I started to notice that for the most part, and obviously not true all the time, but most of the top agencies who are growing and recruiting the fastest, they had all of their people rowing in the same direction. So you look at like Vivian Wells' team, everybody on their team does Zoom call mortgage protection with call-in leads. You look at some of the other teams under like Limitless, Nina Hayden, Bowen, Jay Maska, they've got all of their people doing one call close with internet leads, and obviously some IULs and things like that. But you see these little subgroups all over the country. Caitlin Blackburn's team, they're all doing lock-ins. That's what they do. They're all rowing in the same direction, even maybe different lead types, but just in general, they have one game plan that their whole team follows. And I started to notice this, and obviously, beginning of the year, February, we had our convention and we saw a big transition to IULs and simple retirement solutions, annuities, all of that stuff. This massive shift started to happen, and more agents started to get excited about it for obvious reasons. You see so many people in this group starting to talk about persistency, less policies falling off the books, and anybody who's, kind of switched into the IUL space, I'm sure that you've noticed less chargebacks for yourself. The average annual premium increasing. I'm sure that anybody here has noticed that if you were previously doing 10 grand a week and it took you 12 clients to do it, now you're doing 10 grand a week on like 3 clients, and you're starting to see just like a difference in the IUL business versus some of the other parts of what we do. And again, just people are getting excited. I think that's my favorite part about it. Life insurance is a very morbid topic. We're talking about death and dying all day long, and final expense and mortgage protection. It's a need-based sale. Hey, Bob, Mary, if you die, Bob, you make 4 grand, Mary, you make 2 grand. The mortgage is 3, Mary, you can't make the mortgage payment. You need this coverage. And IUL is more of a greed-based sale. We're talking about what happens if they live. And it's just a totally different conversation. Yes, life insurance, that's what we do. But we've just had fun talking to people about their retirement and their future if they're still here. And the life insurance is a massive bonus, and it takes care of families. And I'm just as passionate as ever about death benefit, living benefit, the insurance side. But how can you not get excited when you're talking to people about, fun, positive things that they can use that money for in the future, retiring, all that stuff. So we started to see a shift inside of our team. And I've noticed that for the most part, a lot of our agents who've been here have been a little bit more experienced, have started to niche down into selling IULs. And it's been a really cool transition to see people do. I've seen a lot of people create a little bit more, I think work-life balance is BS, but I've seen people create kind of more harmonious lifestyle where, at least for me personally, since I started selling IULs, I got a date night with my wife, I got a family night with my family, different things. I'm getting more production on 3 full days a week with 2 half days than I was on 6 full days because of the way that I'm working my schedule, and I'm just having fun. And I think that's the biggest thing is I want to make sure that we're creating something that's sustainable for people. I've been doing this for 4 years. And if I continued to do what I did for 3 years, even though I made more money than I ever made in any other opportunity, I was about this close to burning out. So creating something that's sustainable for people, it makes it easier to recruit to as well. Because if you're burning out, you've got this little voice in the back of your mind that's like, if I recruit this person, are they going to burn out too? Are they going to be mad at me if I recruit them and they work really, really hard and it's not sustainable for them? So all that to be said, IUL is really where we're niching down here. And we're going to talk a lot about that. And we've talked a lot about that. And you've noticed most of the trainings over the last, 4 months have been niching down to this. But I think that anybody can learn how to sell IUL, but it takes a very specific person to get good at it. Okay, here's what I mean by that. It may take somebody a little bit longer to get the ball rolling, but once they get the ball rolling and they figure it out, I think we're going to create, quote, like a better agent. And this is not like me trying to be like too judgy on people, but at the end of the day, here's what happens in our business. And again, if you've watched some of our newer videos about, why not to join the life insurance, we talk about chargebacks, we talk about roll up, we talk about the pros and the cons of this business. And at the end of the day, I think anybody can come into this business and sell a final expense policy. They can just kind of, excuse my language, F their way through it and sell Mary a final expense policy and figure it out. And they can go out there and they could just kind of accidentally show up and sell 8 policies in a week. And they do it with some bad practices. Things fall off the books. Industry standard is 30% falls off, even if you're a good agent. That's the average. I know people who have a 95% persistency, but again, we're talking averages. So people have things that fall off the books, and just anybody can come to this business and make money and then be out of the business just as quick as they came in for a handful of reasons that we talk about in boot camp and some of the videos that most of y'all have seen. But I think that if someone goes through and they get started with IUL as their singular focus to begin, and they go through all that training, they learn illustrations, they learn how to talk to people about tax-free retirement, they develop the skills that it takes to be a more high-quality agent selling a high-quality product, we're going to reduce chargebacks, debt, roll-up, all the things that people are afraid of in this business. And I feel like we've at least discovered that when we put a new agent in that position, it creates a sorting process and it kicks out some of the lower quality agents. And like, again, not lower quality people, but just lower quality agents. And what I mean by that is that if somebody comes into the business and they don't make a sale, they're just going to quit. And if they quit, that means I'd rather somebody come in, not make any sales and quit than come in and make 5 sales and 4 chargeback. That's just me personally. I'd rather them come in and make no sales and quit than make 5 and have 4 charged back. So the people who figure it out, we're creating a higher quality agent in the process. So again, every team kind of has their own niche, and I'm not saying you have to do this. We're totally independent. We're just creating a game plan where the majority of our people can have a direction to row. We have at our high point had 200 agents write a policy in a month. But what I'm realizing, and I think this is something that a lot of people, they're trying to wrap their mind around, like, oh man, if I ever want to build an agency, I need to get 200 agents. Like that's a big goal or a mountain to wrap your mind around. And when you have 200 agents where 80% of the volume is done by 20% of the agents, like that's the reality for most agencies. The top 20% of the agents do 80% of the volume. The bottom 80% of the agents do the remaining 20% of the volume. So what I've realized is I would personally, I look back at the last, couple of years, I wish I could have spent more individual time with direct agents as opposed to trying to give a little bit of time to everybody. I would rather have 20 people, 20 direct agents who are just absolute killers, 20 agents selling 20 to 40 grand a month. They reach the highest level in the comp grid, 20 points of spread. You get 20 agents doing 20K a month at 20 points of spread. That's $1 million a year in overrides. When I was in network marketing, to have $1 million a year, you needed like 50,000 people in your downline or something crazy, paying $100 a month. In insurance, if you're doing it on, the traditional model, you needed hundreds of people, probably anywhere between 100 to 300 people. And you're going to have 20% of them doing 80% of the volume. But what I'm realizing is spending more time with an agent, helping them figure it out, increasing their persistency, increasing their average premium. It's going to create a more sustainable agent. And at the end of the day, I'd rather deal with less agents than more agents and help those agents that we do have be really, really successful.